This episode is dedicated to the residents in Florida who lost their homes, lives, and businesses during the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. We hope that this issue of climate change will change people's minds on this topic, on what it can and cannot do to our planet, and what we can do to combat this issue that we have before us. And now, on today's episode of Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez, my film review is Tokyo Story, followed by my segment, Allow Me to Explain. And it all starts right now. This is Jordan Ramirez, and you are listening to Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. And now, here is my latest film review. My film review for this episode is Tokyo Story, released in 1953, directed by Yasujiro Ozu, starring Setsuko Hara and Chishuryu. The synopsis of this film goes like this. An aged couple, Tomi and Shukichi Hirayama, played by Cheiko Higashiyama and Chishuryu, are leaving the small town of Onomichi and heading out to Tokyo to visit their now-grown children. Their first son, Koichi, played by So Yamamura, is a small-town doctor who has a wife and 2 children. Their daughter, Shige, played by Haruko Sugimura, is married and is the owner of a beauty salon. Their daughter-in-law, Noriko, played by Setsuko Hara, works at an insurance company and was married to their son who died during the war, Shoji. Because Koichi and Shige have busy schedules and do not have enough time to take care of their parents or take them out to the city to enjoy the sights, Shige decides to ask her sister-in-law to take them out to the city, and she says yes, after she asked her boss if she would take the rest of the day off tomorrow. Noriko takes them out to Tokyo, and they enjoy the sights and sounds of the city as they are on the tour bus and having a delightful conversation with their daughter-in-law. Koichi and Shige felt that because their parents do not know how long their parents are going to last in Tokyo, like stay in the city, they decide to send them to a hot springs hotel in Atami to relax. Tomi and Shukichi end up staying at the hotel, later realizing that they do not want to be a burden to their children. They are unsure of where to stay in the city since they feel that they are not wanted. So what can I say about this film? It is a character drama that feels all too familiar to me as I was watching this film from beginning to end. While Kurosawa and Mizoguchi were considered the best post-war Japanese filmmakers to emerge into Western culture with their films and their stories and techniques, Ozu, on the other hand, is more of the exact opposite than his contemporaries. This film, which is considered his magnum opus, like all his other films, feels more like poetic realism than stories that would have more movement and tension and melodrama. I feel more comfortable with Ozu for a number of reasons. 1. His films feel more contemporary, not in the modern sense, but in the sense that his films are not set in the historical period like the feudal eras or in 17th, 18th, or 19th century Japan, which would cost a lot of money to make those films, but that it was much more resourceful and economic to shoot his films in the present of when his films were made, and also that they're very minimalist. 2. He broke the rules of the filmmaking methods that we utilize in today's filmmaking business. He was known for his craft of violating the 180-degree rule, the method for angle and reverse angle sequences that we use in today's filmmaking. His camera movement was barely visible in what was known as the tatami mat camera method that mostly comprised of utilizing static movement and shots. 3. That his stories feel calm, soothing, and almost existential as you watch his work. And 4. When you watch how his camera is framed in the interior scenes of a character's house like Shige's house, Koichi's house, Noriko's apartment, Tomi and Shukichi's house in Onomichi, etc., they feel like watching framed photographs with the mise-en-scène approach that captures everything from the background, foreground, and midground of each individual sequence. This film utilizes the main theme instrumental from beginning to end: family, loneliness, old age, and change. It should read themes. One of the few criticisms that I will put on this film, not to be disrespectful or anything, is that It is a slow-moving picture, and some scenes tend to lag here and there. The performances may feel artificial, and the dialogue may feel stilted as someone from the present is watching this film, but I would disagree in saying that the performances feel natural. One of my favorite examples comes from the performance of Setsuko Hara, who plays Noriko in this film, who treats her mother and father-in-law with respect. As you see her throughout the film, she is very emotional, she is happy and optimistic, and she tends not to show any other emotion. But there are a few moments that stand out when she shows her true emotions behind this mask. When Tomi starts to give her some advice that she may feel young and happy, but as she becomes older, like she is, Tomi's character basically, she'll become sad and lonely. As Tomi and Noriko go to sleep in their respective beds, we finally see her true inner emotions reveal with a touch of soft light on her face to give her that angelic quality. The rest of the cast are great in this film as well. The family members each have their own characteristics and quirks that enable to show their true inner emotions on the screen, but it is also refreshing to see what each of them are like as you watch this film all the way through. So, I will get on with the making of this feature. Ozu's longtime collaborator and screenwriter Kogo Nada, who worked with Ozu as far back as 1927, worked with Ozu during the 1920s and 1930s decade. He also worked with him during Ozu's other masterpiece, Late Spring, from 1949. It was Noda who suggested the one film that would be useful for the plot of their next feature, Make Way for Tomorrow, directed by Leo McCarey. And there is a wonderful story about this film from Peter Bogdanovich, who said that when he mentioned this film to Orson Welles, Welles replied, "Oh my God, that's the saddest movie ever made. It would make a stone cry." Ozu never saw the film, but Noda had a great recollection about the film's initial release when it originally premiered in Japan. Ozu and Noda worked on the screenplay for 103 days and 43 bottles of sake, according to Nada's diary. Nada emphasized to Ozu which actors would play the character by focusing more on the character developments over the plot, which is why the film feels a little bit stilted and somewhat confusing for a first-time viewer. Chishu Ryu, the lead actor of the film, gave an interview in 1964 for Sight and Sound magazine about the process. By the time he had finished writing a script, after about 4 months' effort, he had made up every image in every shot so that he never changed the scenario after we went on the set, and the words were so polished up that he would not allow us even a single mistake. Not much information is given about the production dates for the film, so I think it would be a great time to talk to you about the cast of the film, and it will take a little bit longer, but bear with me here. Shukichi Hiroyama, the father of the Hirayama family, I meant to say Hirayama, but okay, is Chishu Ryu, who was a collaborator for Yasujiro Ozu, and he was cast in such films as Late Spring from 1949 and The Flavor of Green Tea Over Rice. He was most memorable amongst Japanese viewers on television as the priest in the long-running Tora series from 1969 to 1992. His wife Tomi is played by Cheigo Higashiyama. She was a collaborator for director Keisuke Kinoshita and appeared in films like Fireworks Over the Sea and was cast in Akira Kurosawa's The Idiot. Almost all of the roles that she played were mostly maternal mother figures. Their daughter-in-law Noriko is Setsuko Hara. She was nicknamed the Eternal Virgin since she was known for playing domestic maternal figures like mothers and daughter type figures. She worked with Yasujiro Ozu in films such as Late Spring and Late Autumn. She also worked with Akira Kurosawa, Mikio Naruse, Hiroshi Inagaki, and so many other filmmakers. She worked in the business until she announced her retirement from the movies and public life in 1963. She became a private citizen, rarely granting interviews and the usage of photography since she never wanted to be an actress and only took on acting as a way to support her family. She died in 2015 at the age of 95. Their eldest son, Koichi, is So Yamamura. He is better known amongst Western audiences for 2 American films, Tora 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 as Admiral Yamamoto and Gung Ho, directed by Ron Howard, as Mr. Sakamoto. He also worked with Yasujiro Ozu in the Munakata Sisters, and he worked on some of Kenji Mizoguchi's films such as The Lady of Musashiro and The Love of Sumiko the Actress. The eldest daughter, Shige, is Haruko Sugimura. She also worked as a collaborator for Yasujiro Ozu in Late Spring, Early Spring, Tokyo Twilight, and Good Morning. Koichi's wife Fumiko is Kuniko Miyake. She was also a collaborator for Yasujiro Ozu, but she appeared in 2 English-speaking films, Escapade in Japan and Until the End of the World, which was her last film before her death in 1992. Shige's husband, Kurazo, is Nobuo Nakamura. He was a collaborator for Yasujiro Ozu as well. He was in Akira Kurosawa's Ikiru as the deputy mayor, High and Low as Ishimaru, and was in the Japanese monster film Frankenstein vs. Baragon, and was in Juzo Itami's Tampopo. Osamu Hattori, whom he is Shukichi's best friend, is Hisao Toake. He was also cast in the film Tora 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 as Ambassador Kurasu. He was in Kenji Mizoguchi's A Story from Chikamatsu, as well as Mikio Narusei's Sound of the Mountain, and also Mikio Narusei's Yearning. His wife Yome is Teruko Nagaoka. She was a collaborator for director Mikio Naruse and was also in Yasujiro Ozu's Early Spring. Her last feature film was a voiceover role in the animated feature film Ocean. From 1984, she died in 2010 at the age of 102. Shukichi's other friend, Fumata, is Eijiro Tono. He was also cast in the movie Tora 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 as Admiral Nagumo. He was also a collaborator for Yasujiro Ozu, also appearing in the film Good Morning, and was in Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo as Gonji the Tavern Keeper. The youngest son, Keizo, is Shiro Osaka. He appeared in a variety of genre pictures ranging from samurai films, historical films, contemporary dramas, and appeared in a few films from the 1980s decade, including A Passionista from 1984 and The Yakuza Wives from 1986, before his death in 1989. The youngest daughter, Kyoko, is Kyoko Kagawa. She appeared in other films such as Kenji Mizoguchi's Sancho the Bailiff, Ishiro Honda's Mothra, Akira Kurosawa's High and Low, and was in Kurosawa's final film as director, Madarayo, from 1993. The film was released on November 3, 1993 in Japan. In 1954, Haruko Sugimura won the Mananichi Film Award for Best Supporting Actress. It made its first screening in the West at the National Film Theater in 1957. But the distributors in the West considered his work too Japanese and unmarketable. His work was not screened in the United States until 1964 at the Museum of Modern Art as part of a package of films that would only be shown at that time. It didn't receive its commercial release in the United States until 1972. It appeared on a number of favorite movie lists, including Sight and Sound magazine in 1992, 2002, and 2012. It was 17th in 1992, tied at 16th in 2002, and topped the poll in 2012. The film overall may be a slow-paced film that could easily make the viewer feel lost as to what is happening in the plot, but the film focuses more on the character development over its plot, and it is a wonderful character drama. It is not melodramatic or artificial, but feels organic, poetic, minimalistic, and also existential as you watch this film all the way through from beginning to end. It is a film that I recommend that you, as a listener, will watch. We will be right back with Allow Me to Explain. We have become too familiar with a variety of award shows, such as the Oscars, Grammys, Emmys, and Tony Awards. But there are other award shows that have gotten not as much television or news coverage, and there is one particular award ceremony that I feel needs to be addressed. That is the Annie Awards, and the main organization behind it, Asifa Hollywood. It's time for Allow Me to Explain. While we are familiar with the 4 major awards such as Oscars, Emmys, Grammys, and Tonys that focus on each faction of the represented industry such as film, television, music, and theater, however, there is a current award show that you have never even heard of. That award show is known as the Annie Awards. That award show was a creation of the non-profit organization Asifa Hollywood. So what is Asifa Hollywood, and what is the purpose of their organization? Asifa Hollywood is connected to the non-profit organization Asifa, which is the acronym for Association Internationale de Film d'Animation. that was originally created in Annecy, France in 1957. It was chartered under UNESCO as an advocacy and education organization in 1960. A few years later, Asifa Hollywood was born. The group was formed by animation professionals including animation producer Les Goldman, animator Bill Littlejohn, voice actress June Foray, to name just a few. The group traveled to France for the Annecy Film Festival to look for ways to bring the films that would be viewed to American audiences. Carl Bell, a member of that group, said, "There was this notable intention of bringing over these films from the European studios like Zagreb, which were quite different in style, stories, and graphics to anything that was being done in Hollywood. It was a way to stimulate the animation artists in Southern California and show there were other ways to make animated films." The organization's main purpose was to exhibit foreign/international animated films that otherwise would never have been shown in the United States. The organization joined forces with the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. Its curator, Henry Hopkins, established the museum's education department. Bill Littlejohn recalled, "The LA County Museum had a big theater, but it was not designed for film. It was for operas, concerts, and music." When John Wilson approached Henry Hopkins about doing a show there, Henry said, "But we don't have a screen." Well, John got a big sheet, literally. The first show we put on at the County Museum, we showed 16mm projected onto an improvised bedsheet, and it worked fine. The people came in and they didn't give a damn about a bedsheet. It was about the content. The most influential of the organization who made an impact was June Foray, who served as the president of Asifa Hollywood from 1973 to 1979. In 1972, Foray had two revolutionary ideas that would change the game of the animation industry in Hollywood. The first was to hold animation cells as work of art to raise money for funds for the nonprofit organization. Foray says, "I thought people would like that, maybe for their little kids to hang on the wall." It was a success, since the organization received donations of production cells from various animation studios, and they had their first auction at Foray's San Fernando Valley home for the first cell auction. The buyers ranged from Ray Bradbury, animator Chuck Jones, and announcer Gary Owens of Laugh-In fame. The second was the birth of the Annie Awards. June Foray recalled in an interview how that came about. "I said, I think we should give animation awards. Everybody else has awards, but animation doesn't. Max Fleischer had just died, and of course he was such a founder of animation, creating Betty Boop and Olive Oyl and Popeye and so forth, and he invented rotoscoping. And so I thought it was a splendid idea to honor him and David Fleischer, his brother, who directed so many of the films. With the blessing of Asifa Hollywood president Nick Bazustow, June organized the first event." So how did the name come about? June Foray recalled, "My husband said, as long as it's an animation award, why not call it the Annie? So it was Hobart Donovan, that was June Foray's animation producer husband, who came up with the name of the award. Now that the award had a name, it needed a place to hold the event. So June Foray ended up calling the Sportsman Lodge, since it was located in San Fernando Valley. But she was unsure about if the people would show up at the award ceremony. We don't know how many people would come. You're always apprehensive about things like that. But then all of the cards started coming in. Yes, I will be there, and a couple of checks started coming in, and over 400 people shows up, so on and so forth. The first trophy for the Annie Awards made its debut in the next year, in 1973, originally made out of wood and plastic. Its first recipient of the award went to Walter Lantz, creator of Woody Woodpecker, who accidentally dropped it, but it was repaired afterwards. Over the years, the Annie Awards handed out their additional award to recognize the master veterans of animation, known as the Winsor McKay Award, named after one of the founders of animation, whose contributions to the animation industry have become an influence on a younger generation of animators who learned from the masters to pioneer the art of animation with landmark achievements in storytelling and technological changes. Originally starting out as a private ceremony to honor the masters of animation for their career achievement, in 1992 the Annie Awards were now becoming a major award show, with each competitive category modeled after the Oscars and the Emmys. It started out small with categories like Best Animated Feature, Best Television Program, and Best Animated Television Commercial. By the mid-1990s decade, the categories started to increase, such as production design, music, writing, producing, directing, storyboarding, etc. As the award ceremony started to grow over the next 20-plus years, so did the amount of attention from Hollywood celebrities who came to the award show to present some of the awards for this now large industry event. including Stan Lee, William Shatner, Jason Alexander, Fred Willard, Phyllis Diller, John Leguizamo, etc. Recently, the only way that you can be able to watch the Annie Awards is mostly online through live streaming on the internet, like on their YouTube channel or on their Vimeo channel, since no other television station like ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, or any cable network would be able to cover it. I have searched for an explanation of why it can only be viewed online and not any one of the major networks or cable channels, but to no avail. I am hoping that in the future that if the Annie Awards will be able to receive television coverage and be taken seriously as a serious award ceremony to an industry that has long been ignored or taken for granted, I would be happy for that. I appreciate the fact that there are many people who believe that animation is limited to just a children's genre that has been normalized by the big giants in the animation studios in Hollywood. But there is so much more that animation can do that is not just family friendly or be a simplistic genre, but also as a serious art form that can address topical themes and issues relating to race, gender, violence, war, and other topical subject matter that animation can handle. This has been Allow Me to Explain. You have been listening to Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. This series is now available to listen to at 4 p.m. on Anchor, Spotify, and Google Podcasts every Friday except for this episode, which will be delayed to Saturday. It is also on my blog website, filmtalkwithjordanramirez.wordpress.com, with my latest podcast episode on the page labeled Episodes. You can contact me on my social media feeds such as LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I am also available on Letterboxd. If there is a film that you recommend that I would put for my next review, make sure to submit it to my social media accounts. And until then, I'll see you at the movies.